An automated external defibrillator is engineered for the chaos of a medical emergency, yet it likely spends 99.9% of its lifespan doing absolutely nothing. The Philips HeartStart FRX is built to survive tougher environments than standard models, handling drops, dust, and water. But even while it sits idle, its internal readiness is not a static state. A device left forgotten on a wall is slowly degrading. Over time, the chemical components meant to save a life dry up, turning a critical tool into a useless piece of plastic. Keeping the FRX operational depends on tracking several staggered expiration dates that do not naturally align. Success in a cardiac emergency depends on whether the person in charge of the device stayed ahead of a specific 2-year clock. The FRX handles pediatric patients using a method that differs from standard units like the HeartStart OnSite. This vector schematic of the FRX shows it eliminates secondary pediatric paths. Instead, an infant-child key slides into a hardware port. This mechanical switch steps down the shock to a pediatric level, utilizing the standard adult pads already connected. Because the infant-child key is solid hardware rather than a consumable, it never expires. There are no chemicals or gels inside to dry out. In many other AED models, pediatric pads are the component most often found out of date during inspections because they are so rarely used. By moving the pediatric function to permanent hardware, the FRX narrows the maintenance focus down to one primary timeline. The base of that timeline is the M5070A battery. This timeline shows the typical 4-year lifespan of the battery while the device sits in standby mode. The M5070A is the same battery used by the HeartStart OnSite model. For facilities running both models, this standardizes your battery stock, making the 4-year replacement cycle easier to manage across departments. However, a 4-year battery can create a false sense of security. It often hides a much more urgent deadline required by the pads. The SmartPads 2 are the single point of failure for every patient treated with an FRX. These pads have a strict 2-year limit. After 24 months, the conductive gels inside begin to degrade chemically, and while the battery is shared, the pads are not. SmartPads 2 are model-specific and will not fit the on-site unit. Since the hardware key handles pediatric patients, these adult SmartPads are the only consumable component that requires tracking. This creates a 2-to-1 ratio. You will go through 2 separate sets of pads for every single battery replacement. If the pads are allowed to expire, the device becomes non-functional, regardless of how much life remains in the battery. By relying on a hardware key instead of separate pediatric pads, the nature of how the device might fail during an emergency changes. The risk shifts from expired gear to the physical loss of the key. If missing, the device cannot safely treat a child. The second risk is purely administrative, failing to replace the adult pads at the 2-year mark. Check the expiration dates printed on your SmartPads 2 today. Ensure the key is stored with the unit, and set a calendar reminder for your next pad replacement. The device is only as reliable as its current components. Keeping replacements on schedule ensures the machine is ready when the cabinet door opens.